So today I'm going to be ranking all 30 episodes from the second season of Disney's Wizards of Waverly Place. Now, most people would consider this to be the best season of the show, and I'd have to agree. Season 2 was epic, and then it led us into the first movie, which was even more epic. Also, side note, for every episode in this season, Alex has a peace sign hidden somewhere on her outfit. See if you can spot any. Anyways, without further ado, let's rank all 30 episodes from Season 2.
Everything is not what it seems.
You stop it! Oh, so you don't do windows. We'll see about that. Ha! Who's cleaning now? The hand, that's who.
In this episode, Justtñ invents a magic hand that helps with any task. Now, the reason I put this episode in dead last is because I always thought this episode was very simple. Sometimes simple works, but sometimes not so much.
So, where's Justtñ taking you to dinner before the movie?
He didn't say anything about dinner.
Well, yeah, no, I know, but I mean, you've been out a few times. Dinner and a movie. It's kind of what people do when they're on a date.
In this episode, Justtñ and Harper have been hanging out more and more, which starts to annoy Alex. Now, although I did love the use of the in through the outdoor spell and the silent movie segment towards the end of the episode, everything else was just pretty forgettable in my opinion.
You're a wizard! I've been thinking about how you cleaned up in class so fast, and there's only one explanation. You are a wizard.
In this episode, Alex finds out that her troublemaking classmate, TJ Taylor, turned their art teacher from a 16-year-old girl to a now 40-year-old woman. Now, I never liked TJ's character. I think he's annoying, but that's what the writers were going for. However, because he's in this episode automatically goes towards the bottom of my list. But there were some things I did like about this episode. I liked how this episode focused on Alex's love for art, although another episode in this season did it a lot better. But I also liked the undo dust that undoes any spell, and I liked how this episode started with the game of spell roulette.
He looks just like the asteroid belt with the rocket ships and... the chair's the same!
Honey, look! The original Milky Way milkshake machine!
I love this so much!
In this episode, Alex gives her father Merlin's hat for his birthday, and the hat gives whoever wears it unlimited wizard powers for a day. Now, I will admit this is one of the better Jerry Russo episodes, even though it wasn't my personal favorite. I thought the pacing was a little slow in the beginning, but at least this episode didn't have Jerry turn into a giant, disgusting bug. Also, I thought it was funny when Teresa said that she found Jerry's newfound confidence to be very appealing, because we all know she wanted to say something else but couldn't because this is a Disney show.
Great. Everything's under control.
Thank goodness my lamp's okay.
In this episode, Alex finds out that the cab she was born in has been retired, and after seeing how upset everyone is by this news, she uses magic to fix the cab, but accidentally brings it to life. So the star of this episode was definitely the car. I never knew a vehicle could have so much personality. Overall, I thought this episode was sweet, but again, just not one of my favorites.
Hi. You one of Alex's friends?
No, Dad, she's with me. A pretty girl can be with me.
Oh, right. Of course.
In this episode, Justtñ meets a girl on a magical dating website, then finds out that she's a werewolf, and then she turns him into a werewolf. Now, out of every episode in this entire show, this episode is probably the episode I have the least to say about. It was okay in my opinion, but not much else. Although I did love seeing Alex with straight hair. That's a good look.
Damn, not just any hail. It's gonna be hail the size of candied yams.
The size of candied yams? Seriously?
Sorry.
In this episode, each Russo kid gets assigned a different mentor for career week at their school. Now, I liked how Mr. Larry Tate got Alex to bust kids who were causing trouble at the school. I also liked how Justtñ caused it to snow over half of Waverly Place to help out his mentor who was a terrible weatherman. I also thought the Mother Nature character was interesting.
Why? Now you don't look so good.
I think I might get well again if the boys and girls believed in fairies.
In this episode, Justtñ is the director of the school's Peter Pan play and must count on Alex to play the role of Tinkerbell. Now, this episode was fun. I liked how Alex brought in a fairy from the wizard world to play her part instead of her. That is so Alex. Also, Alex being a terrible actress during the play was hilarious, and Flutter the fairy was such a fun character.
So you wanted to use magic to solve a problem that started because you used magic?
Yeah, that's kind of what I do, huh?
What's that?
A baby?
In this episode, Alex summons baby Cupid. Now, I like the running gag of Teresa breaking Cupid's arrow whenever Max would play with it. Also, I liked how Jerry and Teresa were arguing throughout this episode, but then when this other lady started flirting with Jerry, Teresa was like, back off, that's my man. Also on Disney Plus, they thought Teresa was showing a little too much cleavage, so they blurred that area out, and I thought that was funny.
Alex, Harper!
What are you guys doing here? I'm in the middle of getting my company ID.
Juliet, I kind of fibbed about me and Justtñ.
You know what? That can wait.
Why?
Because those vampires are about to suck your blood.
What?
In this episode, Justtñ and Juliet have been growing closer together. Meanwhile, Alex and Harper get jobs at the Late Night Bite with Juliet's parents as their managers. Now, I thought it was funny how Juliet's parents were talking when they were looking at Harper and Alex and wanted to suck their blood, but it also did sound a little bit creepy. I also thought the exercise outfits that Jerry and Teresa were wearing were funny. And I liked how Juliet explained that vampires hate pumpkins, and that's why people leave them out on Halloween to scare away vampires. And overall, this episode was okay, but it's my least favorite in the Wizards vs. Vampires saga.
Max, wait!
Max! You can't stop the deli robber.
Guys, I got this all figured out. I'm gonna go over to Murrieta Clown Supply and I'm gonna buy 40,000 marbles for 50 cents each. That's $1 million.
In this episode, Max is determined to catch a burglar who's been robbing restaurants all over New York. Now, I like how Alex was getting pretty serious with Dean, but had to leave him to help Max. Being a hero is not easy. Overall, this episode was nice, and I liked how Alex and Dean had their date at a roller rink. That was cute.
Well, this club might not be so bad.
Yeah, it's not like they have a club cheer or anything. Did I just set it up?
I think you did.
Happy helpers, that's what we are. Helping people, helping near and far. Yeah!
In this episode, Mr. Larry Tate signs Alex up for the Happy Helpers Club at school. Now, I liked how this episode had Alex be friends with a lady named Maggie, who gives off very 1960s hippie vibes. I also thought it was nice how Alex called out the club for rewarding students for doing the bare minimum. And overall, this episode was definitely the coolest episode of Wizards.
What is a calorie?
If you answer that, I quit.
I won't answer it. The amount of energy needed to raise 1 cubic centimeter of water 1 degree Celsius.
In the season premiere, Alex uses a pair of Smarty Pants to help Harper's team win the Tribeca Prep Quiz Bowl. Now, although I thought this episode was nice, I was confused as to why it was chosen as the season premiere. But overall, the episode was alright. I liked how this episode introduced us to Dean for the first time. I also liked how the Smarty Pants came with some weird side effects.
Can you hold it closer?
The answer to that is yes. And now, since you asked me something, I would like to ask you something.
Sure, anything.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of ways I could go here, so...
In this episode, Alex is shown desperately trying to get close to Dean. Now, I like how this episode showed a very relatable situation where you like somebody, but you're not sure if they like you back. But it turns out that Dean did like Alex back, which is good. Also, the transport stick was hilarious. I love how whenever you use it, the people around you always get knocked out. Also, I loved how Alex and Dean crashed their race car into a giant sloppy Joe.
Hey, Russo.
Hi, Dean, listen. Most of the time, I come into your dreams and I control everything, but not this time. It's your dream. You can say and do whatever you want.
In this episode, we see the progression of Justin's relationship with Juliet and the deterioration of Alex's relationship with Dean. Now, I thought this episode did a great job of showing important steps in relationships, and Alex and Justin had to deal with some complicated teen stuff in this episode.
Come on, baby Rockford, we've got a fashion show to save.
I'm tired of modeling. I mean, all that walking up and down and up and down. It's boring. I'd rather play Dungeons and Gargoyles.
In this episode, Harper is interning for a big fashion mogul, then Alex gets the mogul to host his fashion show at the Waverly substation. Now I really like this episode. I liked how they got Cindy Crawford to guest star as supermodel BB Rockford, which is obviously a parody of Miss Crawford. Also, I thought it was cool how Alex duplicated herself, then attacked her clone off screen. Oh, also, if you listen very closely during the fashion show scene, you can hear Don't Stop the Music by Rihanna playing in the background.
Hugh, what are you doing here? Your parents are worried sick about you.
We're taking your advice, Dad, and you told me to be a nicer person, so we're helping Hugh find his birth parents.
But you lied to us about knowing where Hugh was.
And you lied to a pair of giants. The guys at the lodge say that giants eat liars.
In this episode, Hugh Normous, who is a friend of the Russo kids, comes to visit from the wizard world. However, they soon find out that Hugh ran away from home after going through some drama with his adoptive parents. Now, I think this episode handled the whole topic of adoption in a very nice way. I liked when Hugh met his birth parents, they say that the reason they gave him up wasn't because there was anything wrong with him, it's just because they couldn't afford to take care of him, so they did what they thought was best for him. And they did a good thing because Hugh ended up with wonderful parents who just so happened to be giants. I also loved it when the giants were angry at Justtñ for saying all those stereotypes about giants. Also, I loved how Rose Abdu played Hugh's adoptive mother. I also loved her when she played Senorita Rodriguez in That's So Raven.
Let's try this one. Water to Stardust. Wait. Okay, go!
In this episode, Max gets a tutor named Tutor, and she's from the wizard world and she's here to help Max get better at magic. Now this episode was fun. I like the concept of how every wizard kid is named after what their parents want them to grow up to be, but sometimes it doesn't really work out. Also, I liked how Tutor called out the Russos for being super dysfunctional because they are. In this episode, Alex finally throws the zombie prom, which was foreshadowed in an episode from earlier on in this season. Now I really liked how Alex and friends had a dance battle with the zombies that crashed the prom. That was like the most alternative thing I've ever seen. Now everyone ended up loving zombie prom even more than the original one. But my question is, how was Alex able to pull all of this off in such a short amount of time? Way to go, Miss Russo.
Oh, Alex, your journal is so beautiful. Thank you. And revealing. I've seen your Hello Pony blanket. I've seen your teddy bear. I can't wait to see who the knight you're crushing on is.
In this episode, Gigi, the mean girl, steals Alex's journal, then Justtñ and Max use magic to make her a part of the book. Now, I never liked Gigi. I always thought she was one of the weakest mean girl characters on any Disney show, but I will say she is her best in this episode, probably because she doesn't have her entourage with her. Also, I liked how Alex showed everyone at school all of the fairy tale stuff that she draws in her journal. It showed a softer side of Alex, which we all know she tries really hard to hide. Also, the filter that they used when they were in Alex's journal was very weird.
I'm Ronald Longcape, Jr.
Okay. I'm Alex Russo, sophomore. I should be a junior, but I don't test well.
You gotta show up to not test well.
In this two-part special, the Russos must house a bunch of WizTech students after finding out that their school has been damaged. Now, I really liked how this episode introduced Ronald, who interferes with Alex's relationship with Dean. Also, I think Ronald is the first and only wizard guy that Alex has ever been involved with. And I guess after finding out that he was evil, Alex was just like, I'm not going back, I'm moving on to werewolves now. Overall, this was a great special, and I think it's better than the two-part WizTech special from Season 1.
Oh, this is totally bogus!
Dad's pouting because you lost a fight again. No! We are not fighting. That's one thing we're not doing. We're not fighting, so stop fighting. The neighbors can hear us. That's it. I'm calling the cops.
In this episode, the Russos have a family game night. Now, I thought this episode was lots of fun. Everybody had their own little side plot. Jerry was obsessed with winning. Teresa was trying to keep everyone out of trouble. Alex had both hers and Harper's brain stuck inside her head. Harper had no brain in her head. Justtñ had this girl that he kept trying to let down, but she wasn't taking any hints. And Max, I don't know what he was up to, but he was there. Overall, I think many people would say this is one of the most memorable episodes of the show, and I see why. It was nothing but crazy fun.
You know, I owe you an apology. You've done all this, and all I've done is doubt you and be a horrible friend. Alex, you're the best friend ever. Thank you for telling me the truth.
Harper, there's something I need to tell you.
In this episode, Harper finds out that the Russos are wizards. Now I really thought they did the reveal in an excellent way. It was Harper's birthday and she thought Alex was being a bad friend for always ditching her, but it turns out she was just dealing with some wizard stuff. Also, I liked all of the superhero costumes that everyone had on in this episode, because it was like Comic-Con or whatever. Although Justin's pants were very tight and I don't think he looked comfortable. I also liked how Alex gave Harper a birthday cupcake in space. That was cool.
Absolutely not. What are you thinking? Those people are trying to steal our business.
We will not let you betray this family, Justtñ. I don't care how happy you are. Well, as a mother, I care about your happiness, but as a restaurant owner, I don't.
In this episode, the Russos experience competition when a new restaurant opens up across the street. Now, this episode introduced us to Juliet, and I loved how her and Justin's situation was like Romeo and Juliet. They were both in love with each other, but they couldn't see each other because their parents hated each other. I also liked how Alex was trying really hard to get Max out of the house because he was irritating her. Overall, loved this episode.
Again, I have to be careful what I say about the future. But wizards got exposed because someone in this room has a big mouth. I'm not gonna name names.
Way to go.
She said she wasn't naming names. But I know it's me.
In this episode, the Russo kids run into a future version of Harper Finkel, who is played by the hilarious Rachel Dratch. Now, I thought it was cool how future Harper was foreshadowing the events that would happen later on in the series, like Alex meeting Mason, then breaking up with him, and one of the Russo kids exposing magic. Now, this is one of my go-to episodes of the entire show because I just love it. I loved how there was the running gag of Alex not reading. I loved how this episode focused on Alex and Harper's friendship. I also loved how at the end of this episode, Selena Gomez gave us a public service announcement about reading.
So it's called New York Above and Below. Above will be the pretty happy New York, which makes me want to barf, and below will be the gritty grimy New York filled with barf.
In this episode, the school asks Alex to paint a mural for the school because she's so good at art. Now, I love this episode. It's actually one of my top 10 favorites from the entire show. I love how Alex is struggling with being a creator and not knowing if she should paint what she wants or paint what everybody else wants her to paint. Also, this episode was an excellent example of egoist anarchism, but I was never 100% sure what that is. I just always thought this was a fun episode.
What do you want?
Look, Megan! I'm sorry, I can't hear very well right now, but just listen to me, okay?
In the season finale, the Russo kids must convince their estranged Aunt Megan to redo the wizard competition with her brothers, or else Alex, Justtñ, and Max will lose their powers forever. Now, I really like this episode message about not letting the wizard competition come in between the family, like it did for Jerry, Kelbo, and Megan. Also, is it just me, or was this episode kind of a sneak peek as to what would happen in the series finale, when they actually had the wizard competition? Anyways, this was a terrific ending to a terrific season, and I love how Uncle Kelbo made a guest appearance and ended the episode with his usual prank phone call. Or should I say prank wand call.
Isn't making pizza great, Ashley? Yes, I love making my own food. That's what Ashley Olsen does. Yes, I gotta write that down.
Alex, I need your help.
In this episode, the Russo kids win a trip aboard the SS Tipton. Now, this is actually the first part of the 3-part Wizards on Deck with Hannah Montana crossover, and I thought this crossover was very good, but there's 2 reasons why I put it at number 2 instead of number 1. First of all, nobody from the Wizards crew interacted with people from the Hannah Montana crew, and Wizards and Hannah Montana are like in my top 3 Disney shows of all time, and the fact that they didn't interact just makes me sad. Also, there's just one episode from this season that I think is better.
1, 2, 3.
In In this episode, the Russo kids must come up with a backup career path in case they don't win the wizard competition. Now, I liked how this episode had Jerry pressuring the kids to find practical careers, but they wanted to follow their dreams and form a band. I like the message about giving your dreams a shot even if they might not work out. Also, the band's song Make It Happen was a bop. I also liked how this episode had Alex and Justin work together because that always makes for the best content. Just take a look at Wizards of Waverly Place, the movie. Also, this episode first aired on January 1st, 2009, and what a great way to start 2009, which would end up being the best year for this entire franchise. Anyways, that's it for my video. Please follow me on all of my socials, the links are down below, and thank you so much for watching.
We're not afraid to fall, yeah, we're going for